Well, I think we're set up for a pretty good game tonight, guys. I think we've got a good game versus the Packers and Commanders tonight. There should be a lot of fantasy fireworks in this game. I'll be honest, like this is one of those that feels like an instant classic coming because what we've essentially got here is the Green Bay Packers were firing on all cylinders in week one, essentially. With offensively, they obviously have a great coaching staff. They've got a good quarterback. They've got good weapons over there. They look like they're firing on all cylinders. And defensively, obviously, they were just embarrassing the Detroit Lions last week. Then we have the Washington Commanders, who obviously have Jaden Daniels, and Deebo Samuel just had an incredible game. So it's like you had a bunch of just fantastic firepower in tonight's game. So I cannot wait for this game. This is one of those I'm super excited to get into and just enjoy watching tonight. But we're going to answer some questions tonight because I do know that people are in positions to where they're definitely going to have some players tonight and you'd want to know what to do with them. So like the video, subscribe to the channel to show your support if you get value from the stream. And as well, I will be going through every stat we'll be going through today will be on fsroundup.com, our website. So to support the show, to support me, and to support what we've got going on with the site, go to fsroundup.com. Just check out these numbers. They're super in-depth and very easy to digest. John Doe, what's going on? McLaurin tonight, I think he'll be fine. I think he's going to be better than last week. I think that it really just depends on who you've got, that is another option, right? Because, if we go to Terry McLaurin on the site right now, Terry McLaurin just last week had 4 targets, 2 catches for 27 yards. That's just flat out not good enough, right? So we can't afford to have that kind of a day for Terry McLaurin again. And the bottom line is I do think that he will get more involved because if we go to the full team stats and you go over to the wide receiver production over there, Terry McLaurin was in on 55 snaps. So it's not like he was not on the field and not involved whatsoever. He was involved. It just comes down to how much will he be involved in this coming week. So I do think that just being the second game back, I think that he'll be more involved in this game. And it brings me back to what I had been saying all offseason, which was that one or two things was going to happen. Either A, the Commanders were going to be stupid with they were going to be really stupid with Terry McLaurin, or B, they were going to be smart with him and just kind of limit his work, and it looks like they chose to just limit his work. So another week back, I expect him to be a better fantasy asset. FPG, what's going on? JSN or Amari Hampton, full PPR? Definitely Jackson Smith-Njigba. Yeah, listen, guys, I'm not sure people quite understand what Jackson Smith-Njigba just had thrown his way last week. He had a 50% target share in this offense. It was outrageous to watch. 13 targets, 9 catches, 124 yards. Should have had a much better fantasy day by 4 or 5 points. He fumbled the ball twice, and he lost one of them. So not a great look for JSN as an NFL player, but at the same time, man, in fantasy football, you know what you're going to get. And on top of that, the Pittsburgh Steelers are not only dealing with an injury at cornerback to Joey Porter Jr., but the defense, even with him, was awful. So I don't fear the matchup whatsoever, whereas with Amari and Hampton, I have discussed this week a couple times. I think there's a chance it does get weird, and it could be a really scrappy game in Los Angeles or in Las Vegas this week. So I do think that the Raiders will give the Chargers a run for their money. And so I'm not as in on Amari and Hampton this week. I still think that they're in a position to where his best is yet to come. And I don't think it's going to come this week. I would definitely play Jackson Smith-Njigba. Raphael, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. With Kittle injured, I'm starting Njoku. Would you drop Boutte or Ayamainer to pick up Juwan Johnson to start instead of Njoku? I am fine with dropping Ayamainer and picking up Johnson. Because here's my thing, like if you're a member on FS Roundup, you can go to Ryan's rankings here at the top right, and my rankings are updated. There's still there's still a couple things that I'm still working out, but David Njoku's ranking on the site is accurate. So what people have to understand is that David Njoku, I think people are really overreacting to, and the division of labor that was there between himself and Harold Fannin. But listen, if you go back to the Cleveland Browns, like one of the things that's keeping me on the hook with Njoku a little bit is the snap counts. He had 64 snaps in that game, and he had 5 targets. So it wasn't like he was totally irrelevant and pushed to the side for Harold Fannin. And then what's deeper than that is if you go to snap counts on FS Roundup and you look at the routes run, well, David Njoku had 41 routes run compared to Harold Fannin's 32. So it does appear that they're going to be using 2 tight end sets. And maybe Njoku is becoming more of a blocking tight end. I kind of refuse to believe that, though. Like, I do think that Njoku is not out of the equation in the passing game whatsoever. But would I rather start him over Juwan Johnson? No. If I could, I'd play Juwan Johnson. And to me, like, I think Ayamainer is a more valuable pickup. Or I'm sorry, I think Juwan Johnson is a more valuable pickup for you this week than Ayamainer is going to be. So I still am fine with dropping Ayamainer. I'd probably keep Kayshon Boutte because I feel like he's got a legit shot to be their wide receiver 1. Whereas with Ayamainer, we know he's not going to be their wide receiver 1 with Calvin there. So yeah, I'm good with picking up Juwan Johnson and dropping Ayamainer. And then if you did do that, I would definitely start Juwan Johnson over Njoku. Appreciate the super chat. That is how you jump the line. You can send in a super chat, and you will get your question answered immediately. But until then, we'll just go from top to bottom. Jared, what's going on? Good to see you in here tonight. Steve, 562, flex 1. Henderson, Hunter, or Jaden Reed, full PPR. You know, it's really interesting. Travion Henderson, I started out the week not so big on him. I definitely dropped him in my rankings this week. And I explained it on the running back rankings video, which was that, like, hey, listen, if you look at the usage was not very good in New England. So we can pull up the New England Patriots on FS Roundup, and we can go to the running back usage where Ramondre Stevenson was in on 43 plays and Travion was in on 20. And Ramondre basically dominated every single other area of the field. But I think where it gets really interesting is that if you just look at the usage of him when he was on the field, I think it's very interesting. So keep in mind he played 20 plays last week, and Travion Henderson had 11 total opportunities in that game. So that means basically every other time he was in the game, he was getting the ball to him. Now, if you look at Mike Vrabel's comments, I think it was either today or yesterday, he said that we've got to get this guy the ball more in space. Like he said, we have to figure out a way to do that. So it's not like they're forgetting he exists, right? So I actually think that this week in Miami, it could be one of those matchups that he takes advantage of and does a lot better in this week. So for me personally, like I look at this matchup with the Miami Dolphins this week, and I think to myself, how can you not want to take a shot on this guy over somebody like, what were your options? You had Travis Hunter or Jaden Reed. Jaden Reed, I get it. Like the matchup tonight is really good as well. I'm not opposed to doing that. I'd probably play him over Travis Hunter right now. But I think for me, I think I'm ready to take another shot on Travion Henderson. I think I am ready to do that. So that's what I would do personally. Juggalo, what's going on? Scary Terry or Egbuka this week? Easy Egbuka. Listen, I know it's fun to play players on Thursday night, and I get it. Terry McLaurin, in theory, is the wide receiver 1 in Washington, but last week he wasn't, and I still think that it's a little early for me to throw my support behind Terry. Now, I think week 3 will be the big turning point for him, which is because this is going to be week 2 is on a short week, right? Like they played on Sunday, now they play tonight. And then week 3, they get a long week. So they basically get like a mini bye week for Terry McLaurin to get back into football shape, I think, better. So I think week 3 is when I'm going to start feeling more comfortable playing Terry McLaurin. But as of right now, I would still play Emeka Egbuka because I just think that with the matchup that they have versus the Houston Texans, I think there's a good shot that Emeka Egbuka could be in a position to where he's going to be the lead guy because Derek Stingley is going to follow around Mike Evans a bunch. So that's what I think personally. I'd play Egbuka. Raphael, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat again. Is the scare of him breaking out and losing him to waivers bigger than the gap between Njoku and Johnson is what I'm trying to figure out. See previous message. Well, here's the thing, right? Like, if you drop A. Maynor, you're basically asking me, like, what is the possibility of what could happen to him? So let's play it out. So, Elick A. Maynor, if we go over to the Tennessee Titans, and you're looking at the wide receiver usage, Elick A. Maynor was clearly the wide receiver 2 in this offense at 45 snaps and 7 targets, and he only connected on 2 out of those 7 targets for 13 yards. So in theory, he will have much better performances than this one if him and Cam Ward start to click. But here's the problem, is that Cam Ward, he obviously didn't look good last week. I'm not even going to blame that on him. But, I just think that if you look at the schedule for the Titans, like let's look at the schedule for the Titans, right? And figure it out. So the Titans, this week they play the Rams, then they play the Colts, then they play the Texans, then they play the Cardinals. So basically they get a break in schedule versus the Colts. Maybe again versus the Cardinals. But they've got the Rams defense this week, and then they got the Texans defense in week 4. So they're going to have several tough matchups straight. So here's the way I look at waivers personally. So if I'm looking for an immediate need right now, and Juwan Johnson is kind of fitting that bill for you, the way I would personally look at it is, okay, what's my risk reward if I drop X player to the waiver wire? Will they get picked up immediately, or is there a chance that they're still there when I want them back on my team in 2 weeks from now or so? I think the risk reward for Elick A. Maynor is that he could very well be a guy that doesn't see his fantasy value come to fruition until later in the season. Because, again, we just went through their schedule. Like, they play the Rams this week. That's not an easy matchup. Then they play the Texans in week 4. But they also play the Colts defense, who looked vastly improved. It was against the Dolphins, but they did look vastly improved. And the Cardinals defense, which I do think is tough as well. So I think my risk reward for this one is I would be willing to do it. But you seem like you're pretty in on Elick A. Maynor. And to that, I would tell you, trust your gut. Trust your gut. And this is a message I always say to everybody who asks me questions on this channel. If you have a gut feeling on something, then go with your gut. Because my gut tells me it's like reverting me back to how I always play the waivers, which is I'll take the risk on a player who's on a bad offense right now, who I think has upside for the full season, but I don't think we're going to see it yet. Like, that's kind of the game I've been playing with Dante Thornton this week, for example. Dante Thornton, I think, has long season upside, but I don't think that we're going to see it immediately. So I've been willing to drop Dante Thornton for guys like Quentin Johnston and guys like Hollywood Brown, for example. And the reason I do it is because I know that in a couple weeks I'll probably be able to pick him back up. So that's just the way I play waivers, but I get your perspective here, and it sounds like you're leaning towards keeping A. Maynor, so keep him. I mean, keep him, seriously. Like, I think that you go with your gut, and a lot of times when you go with your gut, you're right. So that's my 2 cents, but you go with your gut. Appreciate the super chat. Okay, back up to the top. Chaludo, what's going on, man? Good to see you in here tonight. Penix or Caleb? My other starting quarterback is Hurts. So I'm assuming you're in a super flex league and you need your quarterback too. So in that case, I would say I am leaning towards Caleb this week for a couple different reasons. Michael Penix this week is playing the Minnesota Vikings. And I think that matchup is really tough. Like, even though they gave up points to Caleb last week, because Caleb ran the ball well and he also had a good first half, the Vikings defense figured it out by the second half, and they pretty much shut down Caleb Williams. And Penix is in a position to where if he has London, he'll be in a weakened state. He may have Darnell Mooney back, but I still think that Penix is in a rough spot this week because he's going to Minnesota to take on the Vikings. So I really do think that Penix is in a tough spot this week. Cliff, come here, bud. Come here. It's okay. Yeah, I think he's in a tough spot this week. Whereas with Caleb, I think that, Caleb is in a position right now where everything is on him, right? Like, all eyes are on Caleb Williams. And I think it's for good reason. But I also think that if you just look at the Detroit Lions defense last week and the way that they performed, it would indicate that, like, this isn't a team that you need to fear particularly anymore. And it's something that I discussed for a lot of the offseason, which is like, you have to take into account the loss of coordinators that Detroit had this offseason. That's not the same team. And they proved it last week. They looked a lot more deflated on both sides of the ball, just not nearly as sharp. So I think Caleb's got an actual opportunity this week to take advantage of. Whereas with Penix, I just don't see as much upside with him versus the Vikings defense. I'd play Caleb. Raphael, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat again. Would you drop Nick Chubb instead of Elick? I have CMC, Genty, and B-Rob as all my running backs. See, no, I personally wouldn't. Like, Elick is the guy I would drop. Like, that doesn't change my opinion. My opinion is, again, that if you look at Elick Ayamaner, obviously the usage was high last week, and he was on the field a bunch. But if you look at the schedule and factor in the rookie quarterback who looked awful last week, like as I expected he would, 28 pass attempts for 12 completions and 112 yards, that's backup numbers in the league. And I'm not saying that Cam Ward sucks. I'm just saying that was a tough opener. But the reality is he doesn't get a break this week. He doesn't get a break in week 4 versus the Texans. And the Cardinals could be one of those matchups too. Even the Colts could be tough. So I think that there's a chance that Elick may be a later season breakout after the smoke clears and he's in the league for half a year, referring to Cam Ward, and their schedule lightens up a little bit. So, no, for me, it's still Elick. Like, the reason I'd keep Chubb is because he's a starting running back, and he may be for the duration of the season. And I get it. Like, last week, it wasn't, like, incredible work or anything like that. But, I mean, Dare Gumbawale was their pass-catching running back, but Nick Chubb was definitely their lead back on carries. He had 13 carries compared to the next guy who had 3 carries. Both Damian Pierce and Woody Marks had 3 carries. But if you looked at his yards per carry, like, Nick Chubb looked a lot similar to how he looked over the years with his yards per carry. So I think for me, like, in a better matchup, Nick Chubb is someone I'd very much consider playing. So, no, I'd keep Nick Chubb. I mean, a starting running back in the NFL is valuable in fantasy. A wide receiver, too, in fantasy in the NFL is also valuable, but not nearly as valuable as a starting running back. So I think I'd rather just drop, like, I'm still going to drop Elick. That's my personal decision. Again, I encourage you to go with your gut. Like, it sounds like you really want to keep Elick. So if you are really, really stuck on that and you don't agree with what I'm saying, that's totally fine. Like, you make your own decision on that because Elick very well could break out. With those types of numbers, volume-wise, and just being on the field that much, it's not lost on me that he could absolutely have one of those weeks that he does break out. But I'm telling you the way I handle business and the way I personally handle my fantasy teams. I'm a dice roller, and I like to make the most out of every opportunity. And I feel that Elic Ayamander could have a disappointing start to the year, and it will come down to him just not. It will come down to Cam Ward playing better at the second half of the year, which I think will happen. So you trust your gut, though. Like, it does seem like you want to keep Elic. So I would highly suggest you trust your gut. I appreciate the super chat. Sean G, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Should I flex Shakir or Mason? You know, that's a really interesting question. So I was a big Khalil Shakir guy during the offseason. Again, if you are a member on FS Roundup, you can see my full rankings this week, and you'll probably notice that Khalil Shakir is lower than he was last week. So the reason why is not because of, like, involvement, right? Like, he was still involved. He had 8 targets in the game, and he was very efficient with the targets. Like, I don't have a problem with his efficiency and his involvement. It's more so about the matchup, because I do think that the Jets will get walked all over this week by the Bills. And I do expect this to be more of a run-first game for the Bills, especially in the second half. Because I get it. People are high on the Jets right now. I think that comes to a crashing end in week 2. Like, I really, really do. So I think that they're in rough shape this week, and I think that there won't be much of a need to throw the ball as much. Because really, like, realistically, like, Khalil Shakir, while he was involved throughout the whole game, all of their numbers went up after Buffalo started scoring points against the Baltimore Ravens because they had to keep pace. They're not going to have that need this game. I think that they'll beat the Jets pretty easily, and I think that their running game will be more important, and James Cook, it's a week for him. Whereas with Minnesota, I think it could be the reverse. I think they could easily crush the Falcons in this game because the Falcons, I just don't think are as good of a team as the Vikings. And as long as J.J. McCarthy doesn't look absolutely atrocious the whole game, like he basically did in week 1, then I think that you could be in a position to where Jordan Mason could run out the clock a lot. So game script-wise, I'm definitely going with Jordan Mason in this one, and I think he will be the better fantasy player this week. Appreciate the super chat. And really quick, guys, I just want to say, these are all just my opinions, on start-sit decisions. If you do want to get a full team breakdown from me so I can address trade targets to go after in your league, waiver wire decisions to go after in your league, and just overall how to make your team better to help you win this year, you can go to fsroundup.com. There is a link in the chat below, and there is a link in the description as well. And when you sign up for that premium subscription, you can get essentially what you can get is a full team breakdown from me. So if you email me your team, I will break down your team after your 12-day free trial ends when you sign up for that premium subscription. It's a great offer right now because, again, you get that. You get the automatic waiver wire tool, which is legendary in the space, never been done before. And number 3, you also get access to my rankings as well. So there's a lot of good things going into that. So if you do want a full team breakdown, you can go to the link that's in the chat and in the description below. Join the premium subscription, and I will break down your team after your free trial ends. But again, appreciate the super chat. Raphael, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Thanks a lot, man. Platform looks great. Keep it up. Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, I think, we've heard a lot of positive reviews. We had a comment yesterday on one of my videos that someone on the West Coast got a text from their buddy on the East Coast that they, like, how the heck did you claim, I think it was like Quentin Johnston before him? Because, like, on the East Coast, you theoretically have an advantage because you would wake up before someone on the West Coast. But with the automatic waiver wire tool, you grab that guy in the middle of the night because we monitor waivers up through, like, 7 a.m. And we're automatically going to grab that player for you. So, we've got a lot of good feedback. We are a 2-man team still, so it definitely is still obviously a work in progress. And I would encourage those who are subscribed and are members at FS Roundup, if you do have concerns about something, you can always email us at fsroundup@gmail.com. And we will answer your questions in a timely manner as fast as we can because it is a 2-man show. But we want to make sure that everyone has a great experience. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate your support. Dilly My Nilly, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. I have Jacobs, Cook, and Kamara. I'm worried about Kamara's usage. Should I flex Debo or McMillan instead or stick with Kamara? So you have Jacobs, Cook, and Kamara. You're worried about Kamara's usage. So let's go to Kamara's usage on the site. Now, I'm not particularly worried about Kamara's usage. I think that Alvin Kamara is in a position to where you can still count on him to be getting everything he can. I think that the Saints are trying to play it smart right now and trying to keep him fresh because they actually have a smart coach in charge now. So he had 11 rushing attempts for 45 yards and a touchdown, 2 targets as well. So we had 13 opportunities in that week 1 game versus the Cardinals. And by the way, it was a close game. Now, this week, they're going up against, who do they play this week? Let's go to week 2. So they play the 49ers, that's right. So they play the 49ers this week, and I think that this could be a matchup. It could be a very similar game script to where Saints are actually in it for a long time, and it could be one of those similar types of deals. So I get where you're coming from. I'm not personally as worried about the usage for Alvin Kamara as you are, but you're asking me about Debo or Tet McMillan, and to that I would say I would play Kamara over Tet very easily, but it is a legitimate conversation if you go with Debo. Like, I could easily see myself playing Debo over Kamara. Now, the thing with Debo tonight is that you always have to acknowledge this with Debo. He is a boomer bust player. Now, in this matchup, it would indicate, I think it's a matchup you want fantasy options in. So I do lean towards playing someone like Debo. I'm not sure if it's over Kamara, though, because, again, I'm just not particularly worried about Kamara's usage. I get it. Like, he did have 13 opportunities in this game, but he did still dominate in the snap total. So it's like, if you just look at snap counts played, Alvin Kamara was in on so many more snaps than the next closest running back. And Alvin Kamara, his routes run were 37. Like, that's insane to think about. The next closest was Devin Neal at 3. So, like, for me, again, this is the beauty of the resource on FS Roundup, that it's completely free to you guys. You can get in-depth stats like this to really break down what you're seeing. Because, again, I see where you're coming from just based on a volume perspective. But every other important, like, foundational metric would indicate that Alvin Kamara will not lose a significant amount of volume on a weekly basis. Like, he's just in there too much. So if there was real threat, I would say that you'll see Kendre Miller or Devin Neal in plays more, but you just don't see that very much. So I would still go with Kamara personally, but that's just me. And I would also say that they're close enough, Debo and him, in my rankings to where I would say you could go with your gut. I would say that you could do that. So if you don't feel like you should play Kamara, go with your gut. But I would personally play Kamara. Appreciate the super chat. YNW Marty, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Start 2 PPR. Egbuka, Hollywood Brown, and Pollard. Egbuka is definitely in, without question. And it comes down to Hollywood or Pollard, and they're very close to my rankings. Like, I will say that. Now, again, I just went over this with Elik Ayamainer, which is that this is a tough matchup here. It's a tough matchup versus the Los Angeles Rams, and Tony Pollard, look, like, I get the volume is there, but, like, I just don't think he's that good of a player. I just don't. And so you factor in the Rams matchup, and it's just not a guy I'm excited to play for a second week straight. So he's already, like, lower on my list because of that. Now, Hollywood, I would say the same thing applies to him in the sense that I'm not a big Hollywood fan either. I think Hollywood Brown has always been overrated. And even, like, last week, he dropped, like, I think it was 2 passes. So he wasn't that particularly great. Now, I will say this. I think that Hollywood is in a position to where he's unquestionably going to get so much work in this game that it's like you can't ignore it. Like, 14 targets last week is, I think, maybe not 14, but I would be shocked if he didn't get 10 targets in this game. Like, I would be shocked if he did not get 10 targets in this game. It's a game, Super Bowl rematch versus Philly. They're desperately trying to avoid starting 0-2. So I think that Hollywood just has so much guaranteed volume as well, and he's just on a better offense to me. So for me, it's going to be Hollywood and Emeka Egbuka. Appreciate the super chat. Gourmet Diarrhea. What's going on? Appreciate the super chat. That is a great name. Full PPR. Just traded Coleman for Rice. Thoughts? Oh, man. Well, if you would have asked me that before the season started, I would say tremendous work. I think that Rashee Rice will be excellent when he comes back. Now, for those of you who don't know, and I'm not sure how you wouldn't know this, but Rashee Rice is suspended for the first 6 games. So we're 1 down, so he's got 5 more games to go. So he's making no impact on your team. He was making no impact on the previous Rashee Rice owner's team. Now, with Keon Coleman, again, if you would have asked me this a couple weeks ago, I would have said great work. And I'm not even sure I'm saying bad idea now. I'm just saying that what we saw with Keon Coleman on Sunday night was a revelation to me. And I have heard people say that, like, hey, chill out, bro. Like, it was a blowout. Not a blowout. It was a high-scoring matchup. This won't be the case all the time. But my response to that is, listen, this is who Josh Allen is. Like, Josh Allen is Superman. So if he has a wide receiver that is going to be good enough to go out there and execute on the plays that he wants to make, then they're going to be extremely valuable. I mean, we just haven't seen a wide receiver super valuable in fantasy since Diggs left. But the reality is, like, what you saw with Keon Coleman, that was like a regular stat line for Stephon Diggs. And I'm not saying that Keon is all of a sudden Diggs. Like, Keon had to drop himself in this game, looked like he did last year in certain parts. But I will say that he looked much more dominant and much more capable as a wide receiver 1 than he did last year. So I'm like wondering now, okay, is this the breakout? And I said this yesterday in regards to Bill Croskey, which is that I got asked if they should trade Bill Croskey for I think it was like Amari Hampton. And I said no, I wouldn't do it. And the reason I said that with Bill is because I don't know what Bill is yet, but I do know that his upside on this offense of Washington is stupid high. So I don't want to sell him now only to find out that he's a top 10 running back by the end of season because of the offense that he's on. Well, the same thing applies to Keon right now for me, which is that if it was my team, I don't think I would sell Keon right now because I know I wouldn't get the value I wanted from him. And I also know that he has so much upside to be great in fantasy that I just don't want to sell him. So when it comes to like those players who are relatively unknown still, but they're on the potential come up, I don't want to sell them off. So I'm not faulting you because I still love Rashee Rice and I do think he's a great player in fantasy. I would still draft him today. But I will say that like that gap has gotten smaller because Keon Coleman, if he can break through, really could be a tremendous, tremendous fantasy asset for your team because he's attached to Josh Allen. Appreciate the super chat. SR20 Mar, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Need a defense. Rams, Ravens, Green Bay, 49ers, or Detroit. Well, there's really good options in there. My defense number 1 on the week is the Ravens, and it hasn't changed. I actually even saw today that rain is in the forecast for that game as well. So if that's the case, like I'm definitely playing the Ravens defense. I mean, I already think that the Ravens will blow out the Browns, and the good thing about it is, again, that Joe Flacco is a turnover machine. Like, he's kind of like Jameis Winston in a way. He does throw like 2 picks a game, and I just don't think they're going to score that many points on a pissed-off Ravens team coming back home off a brutal emotional loss. I just can't see a world where I don't want to play the Baltimore Ravens as my number 1 defense this week. So, personally, that's exactly what I would do. I think the Rams defense is also a great option as well. They're my defense number 2 on the week right now. But that being said, those 2 defenses are several tiers above the rest of them. 49ers, Green Bay, Detroit. Like, I think 2 out of the 3 of those, Green Bay and 49ers, are particularly stronger options, but not nearly as strong as the Rams and particularly the Ravens. So I would play the Ravens. Appreciate the super chat. Adam Thompson, man, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. I like Stroud's upside this week. I think he might remind us of how great of a player he could be. Last time he faced the Bucs, he threw for over 300 yards and 4 touchdowns. I currently love starting. I currently have Love starting, but I'm facing Hurts. Too risky? You know, it's really interesting that you bring that to the table because about 2 hours ago, I was putting my rankings together on FS Roundup, the site, and I was thinking to myself, you know, when I was ranking my quarterbacks earlier this week, it felt weird having CJ Stroud as high as I had him. And again, for those of you who are members at FS Roundup, you could take a look at where my rankings are with CJ Stroud on Ryan's rankings. And it was really curious to me because I was like, dude, usually I'm not this big on CJ Stroud, but I have a good feeling about him this week as well. Like, I think that the Texans are a good team. And I do think that they're kind of getting dogged right now for some reasons that I think are correct. I think that the offensive line argument is definitely a real thing. Like, their offensive line is atrocious. But that a lot of times doesn't factor in when you're talking about lesser defenses. And the Rams are a good defense. The Bucs are not particularly great. So I wonder if that comes less into account this week when the Texans take on the Bucs as well. And I do think that this is a game that the Texans are going to be really motivated to win at home on Sunday night or Monday night, and they don't want to get embarrassed in front of their home crowd on national television. So I agree with you. Like, I actually do really like starting CJ Stroud in certain situations. It sounds like you've got a feeling on this one, and I would say trust your gut. But I will say, for me, I'm playing Love tonight. And if I had that option, I would play Love pretty consistently because of the fact that I've said this multiple times, like, throughout this live stream. I think that this will be a matchup you want pieces in on. I think that the scoring upside for both of them is, I think they could both put up 30 points easily. Like, I think Green Bay's defense is great, but I mean, you have to factor in Jaden Daniels, and I think Green Bay's offense is so much better than the Commanders' defense is. And when you looked at Love last week, he was extraordinarily efficient. Like, the reality of why he didn't put up as many fantasy points last week is because he didn't need to. Like, they were at such an advantage by the time that the end of the third, fourth quarter came around that it was like, why even bother throwing? That we could just run the clock out. So I think it's not the case this week. And I think that Jordan Love will be in a position to where he's going to have to throw deep into the third quarter. That's my opinion. So I think for me personally, I would definitely go with Jordan Love. But again, this is something so important people have to remember. Is like, if you have a personal feeling on somebody, go with your gut. Just do it. Go with your gut. Because there's nothing more powerful than a gut feeling. And a lot of times people are right when they have a gut feeling on somebody. And this could just be your scenario with CJ Stroud this week. I don't personally have that feeling with CJ, but I'm not inside your brain. I'm not inside your gut, thankfully. So I would tell you to go with your gut, but my gut is definitely CJ underneath Jordan Love. And I would play Jordan Love every time this week if it was me. Appreciate the super chat. Tyler Sperry, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Start Ingram or Jobinson? Well, I'm assuming you're saying Juwan Johnson. And that's a great question. I think that, again, this is one of those today that when I was putting my rankings together on the site, I couldn't believe how high I had Juwan Johnson ranked. Like, it felt so freaking weird that I had Juwan Johnson so highly ranked. And I'll give you just a secret. Like, Juwan Johnson is a top 5 tight end for me this week. It's crazy. Like, I don't remember the last time I had Juwan Johnson ranked inside my top 5 tight ends. It certainly hasn't been the past 2 years. But, I mean, it's undisputable. Like, when you look at his usage in the game, he was in on 74 freaking snaps. And he was targeted 11 times. And if you go to the routes run, I mean, Juwan Johnson led the freaking team in routes run. He had 47. Like, this was not a tight end that was in on run blocking plays. This was a legitimate pass catching option. One could argue that he will be the primary target moving forward for Spencer Rattler, not Chris Olave. I honestly might make that argument. Because I think that what we saw last week, if you watched the Saints game, what you saw was that Spencer Rattler looked at Juwan Johnson as a safety blanket. And that's typically what a lot of young quarterbacks do. And Spencer Rattler's just not that good in general. But I think that, when you look at Juwan Johnson, like, he is just going to be extremely involved moving forward. And it's a matchup that, like, in theory, the matchup is not great, like, against the 49ers defense, which I do think is really good. But, I mean, they're dealing with so many injuries, too, that, like, there could be a lot of offensive opportunities for him. And I think about Ingram, and it's like, this guy is dealing with injury. And while he is off the injury report I did see earlier today, it still did happen last week. And I do think that they will beat the Colts pretty handily this week. So I'd personally go with Juwan Johnson this week. I think that, again, I was shocked to see how I actually ended up ranking Juwan Johnson at the end of the day, but I stand by it 100%. Like, if you just look at the usage and you look at the amount of routes run, I mean, the guy's here to stay. I mean, he was too effective for them. So I would play Johnson. Appreciate the super chat. Chaludo, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Pick one, Diggs, Tillman, or Javonte for the flex. Well, for me, my thing with Cedric Tillman is that I think that Cedric Tillman felt, and I'll be honest here, like, out of all the waiver pickups at the wide receiver position this week that I covered, and I covered 10, Tillman, to me, felt the most, I don't want to say fluky, but he felt the most unstable. Because with Joe Flacco, like, I remember last year, and people can't forget this very easily because it was a year ago. I remember last year feeling like Flacco would be a much better player and a much better quarterback for fantasy than Anthony Richardson, and he was better, but he wasn't that much better on a consistent basis, that's for sure. Like, Flacco is 40 years old, and he's definitely not always perfect. So it's not every week that you will get 2 wide receivers that are viable in Cleveland. And against the Ravens this week, again, in the rain and versus a pissed off Baltimore team, I don't feel like Cedric Tillman's that great of an opportunity this week. With Stephon Diggs, obviously the matchup is fantastic. It's versus the Miami Dolphins. Their secondary was atrocious before all the injuries they got in August, and it's even more atrocious now. And then with Javonte, he's also got a matchup that I think is very strong as well. I think it very well could be. It's hard to tell, I'll be honest here, because Javonte, last week I believe this. He greatly benefited from Jalen Carter being out the majority of that game. And I think if we saw Jalen Carter the full thing, he may not end up with 2 touchdowns. Maybe he ends up with 1. And maybe instead of having 54 yards on the ground, he has like 40. Because I don't think Javonte's that good. But I will say that the Giants' defense is really good. Their defensive line's really good. But at the same time, this offense is so atrocious with Russell that it's like, what upside is there really for him? So I still think that Javonte is in a position to where he can execute this week, and I think Diggs can as well, and they're really close to my rankings. But I will say that there's just something that hasn't felt right with me all offseason and even in the start of the season when I watch the Patriots play, there's something that just has not felt right about the fit Stephon Diggs is in with New England. I just don't think the fit is great. And I think it's a bad, lousy fit that Mike Vrabel doesn't really like him that much. And I think it could be a Tyreek Hill situation where just throughout the year, like he'll just lose more and more favor in the team and he'll just start tanking. I'd play Javonte. It's a gut thing. They're very close in my rankings, Javonte and Diggs. So I would say go with your gut, but I would say my gut definitely tells me Javonte Williams. Appreciate the super chat. Okay, we've got like 10 minutes to game time, so I'm going to try to speed through several more questions here. Like the video, subscribe to the channel to show your support, by the way, if you haven't done so already. And again, check out FS Roundup for all these free stats right here. And if you want to get your team fully broken down by me, join the premium subscription, and after 12-day free trial is over, I will personally break down your team for you in an email, and if you want to, I'll even break it down in a YouTube live stream. Amir Blocker, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Traded Fields and Worthy for Rashee Rice. Thoughts? Fields and Worthy for Rashee Rice, I think, is solid. I do. I actually think this is a really creative trade because essentially what you did is like with Worthy particularly. Worthy now, I will say this. I saw Worthy was like limited in practice today. So the possibility that he comes back sooner than I originally thought is real. So he could come back a lot sooner than I expected. But at the same time, the moment that Rashee Rice comes back, Worthy won't be as nearly as valuable in fantasy as Rashee Rice is. So for me, it's like even if you get a month out of Xavier Worthy being good, it's still worth it to get Rashee Rice. And I think that right now is a great time to execute on Justin Fields as a sell high. Like I will tell you this, like I personally, in one of my dynasty leagues, I have Justin Fields, and the reason I have him, and I picked him up, it's a more shallow dynasty league. It's like a shallow bench, so the waivers are always active. And the reason I grabbed Justin Fields at the beginning of the offseason was for this purpose right here, to sell him high. And I think it's a great opportunity to do that. And again, I think that Rashee Rice is still a player I believe that when he comes back, he'll be so important, and he'll be an excellent fantasy player. I like that trade. I think it's really creative, and I think that selling on the upside that Fields has was so great right now. Because what you'll get if Rashee Rice comes back full strength is a top 10 wide receiver in fantasy. Bookmark it. Appreciate the super chat. Gio Ortiz, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. PPR flex, Debo, Pearsall, or Pickens, starting AJ and Emeka. I would definitely play Debo. For sure. Listen, Ricky Pearsall would be closer in contention if he had Brock Purdy, but I was like answering somebody's question yesterday about Ricky and like what his outlook would look like without Brock Purdy, and I was like, yeah, I would definitely change and go down, but I think he's going to play. And then like an hour later, they said Brock Purdy is out for the next couple weeks. So yeah, Ricky definitely dropped in my rankings, and again, that's updated on FS Roundup. But with Pickens, he just is not in the same category as Debo to me. I mean, Debo tonight in this game, I think, again, you want options in this matchup. I think it could be both teams put up 30 points. So I want options in this matchup right here. I would go with Debo personally. And if you do play Debo, make sure to put Debo Samuel in your wide receiver spot. You don't want a Thursday night player ever to take up your flex position. Because let's say that you have an injury to one of your running backs, and you have a backup running back that you could put in, but you don't want to use that flex spot. But you want to use that flex spot instead of the running back spot. Well, that flex spot is now being taken up. So I think that you're just in – it's just always a better idea to put – Thursday night players in the flex. So make sure to put Debo in the flex and put either A.J. Brown or Emeka Egbuka in Make sure to put Debo in your wide receiver slot and Emeka, Egbuka, or A.J. Brown in the flex. Appreciate the super chat. That guy, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Can you rank these players as best to worst starts this week? Thank you and appreciate all you do. I appreciate you being here. Myers, Pollard, Swift, Hollywood, Pickens, and DJ Moore. So in order for best to worst, I would say that the best option in there, to me, is still DeAndre Swift. I think when you look at the usage for DeAndre Swift, even though it didn't pop off like I thought it could, the usage for DeAndre Swift was it showed you what you needed to know. Coleman guy was not nearly as involved as I thought he would be. 8 plays, and they had no they were empty set several plays. Swift dominated that. He also dominated in work. He had 17 rush attempts and 5 targets, 20-plus opportunities per game. They get a break in matchup this week. I think Swift is a great play. I would say number 2 is going to be Hollywood. I would play him over Jacoby Myers and George Pickens because he's just going to be so utilized in this offense. He will be used into oblivion. 10-plus targets is on the horizon again. So I would say Hollywood is my number 2. My number 3 would still be Jacoby Myers over Pollard because Jacoby Myers is in a matchup that I think could get really feisty and really chippy, but I also think with Geno, you still have that upside, and even with Brock Bowers there, what you're dealing with is an injury with him. And currently right now, Pete Carroll is not even sure if he's going to play. So if he doesn't play, Jacoby Myers is in line for 10 targets as well. So he's my number 3. Pollard would be my number 4. And I just don't like the matchup as much. Your top 3 guys being Swift, Hollywood, and Myers, they're in a tier break. Because Pollard I don't prefer to play very much because of the matchup. I would rank, and then DJ Moore and George Pickens, they're almost back-to-back my rankings. The way I have them ranked is I would rather play DJ Moore than George Pickens because I think the matchup with Pickens this week is not one of those that's super high upside because I don't think they're going to have to throw the ball that much. I think they will beat the Giants pretty handily. So I would personally prefer to play DJ Moore over George Pickens. So for me, in order from best to worst, it is DeAndre Swift, Hollywood Brown, Jacoby Myers, Tony Pollard, DJ Moore, and George Pickens. Appreciate the super chat. All right, our last question right here is to Carlos. And the question is, trade Pickens and ETN for London. Trading ETN is definitely not something it's not something I love doing at this point. I do think that ETN could be really, really good this year. I think ETN could easily be a top 15 to top 10 back this year. But London obviously has so much upside. And Pickens is a player, I stand by what I've said all offseason, which is that I think he's a player that could easily implode. And it just doesn't look good for the Cowboys and for George Pickens in fantasy. So with ETN, I do have to also keep in mind with ETN, because my thing with ETN is a personal thing almost, because I have nailed ETN now for, this would be 3 straight years if he does well. 2023, I called him a league winner. He was. 2024, I said, don't draft him. You shouldn't have drafted him. Year 3 in 2025, I said, I like ETN this year, and he's done well so far. I also do have to keep in mind it still is the Jags, and I do still think that they're not going to be that great. So they're not an offense I want to be married to. Neither are the Falcons, but I will say that just with the upside of London and the clearness that we see Drake London being that wide receiver 1, I do have to say I would take the London side on this one. But I think if it was me, the way I would do it, because I just hate giving up ETN, the way I would do it is I would try to ask for a running back in return. I would try to ask for somebody like a Bill Kroskey or somebody like a Zach Charbonnet. That's what I would do personally. Appreciate the super chat. I'll answer a couple more questions right now as well, just to speed race through. Did get a super chat. Daniel Kazaski, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Do I start Packers defense today or the Cardinals on Sunday? Do I start Packers defense today or the Cardinals on Sunday? Okay. Yeah, I'd go Cardinals for sure. Listen, the Packers defense I like a lot, and I do think they will be good to a point today because I think they could. There's a chance that they could sack Jaden, and there's a chance that they also could hold them to less points than I think, but I still do think this will be a high-flying matchup in all likelihood. So I'm still more on board with like this being a more fantasy-heavy matchup than it is a defense fantasy-heavy matchup. So I would play the Cardinals, who they're playing an offense that bottom line is just not very good. Like the Panthers are just not a very good offense, and I just don't see nearly the amount of upside to them scoring 20-plus points as I see with the Commanders doing. So for me, it's definitely the Cardinals. Appreciate the super chat. So let me speed race through a couple more questions towards the top before the game starts. Nate Dogg, what's going on? Good to see you in here. Trade Pickens and ETN for London. Just answered that. Ertz or Ingram? I would personally go with Zach Ertz this week, considering Ingram's hampered by injury. Flex Adams, Egbuka, PPR flex. I would flex Egbuka. Kraft or Fannin? I would personally go with Tucker Kraft. Who should I start at flex? Cedric Tillman, Emeka Egbuka, or Ridley? I would go with Emeka Egbuka. Is Kamara a sell high in half PPR? I have Monty and Genti as my other running backs. Wide receivers are Brian Thomas Jr., Evans, Olave, and DJ Moore. I think that Kamara is not a sell high player. I think if anything, he might be a buy low player right now. So that's going to do it for tonight. I will be live after the game to recap the game for fantasy football purposes, so make sure to stay tuned after the game. But until then, let's enjoy tonight's game. Like the video, subscribe to the channel to show your support, and I'll see you guys after the game. But on your way out, go to fsroundup.com, check out all these free stats right here, and if you want a full team breakdown, you can sign up for the premium subscription membership, and after your 12-day free trial ends, I will break down your team for you, both in an email and also on YouTube if you want it that way. So appreciate you guys, and I'll see you guys later tonight. Peace.